Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Lauren Jepson, the Executive Vice President of TVIB. I have Caleb King, our Senior Operations Manager, and Rick Dunn with you today. I want to welcome everybody to this month's installment of TVIB Talks. We're kind of coming to you with a little bit different forum than we've done in the past. Normally, we have this session every other month for our TVIB members, auditors, and surveyors. We invited Rick here today to talk to everybody about a topic that really pertains to anybody that's TSMS option, and that's about the designated person. So just want to introduce Rick a little bit. Not sure if everybody has had a chance yet to interact with him. Rick is the president of SafeMAINER, which is a consulting business that provides safety management, ISM code, TMSA, internal auditing, etc. activities. He worked as the vetting manager for ExxonMobil for a number of years and is currently an instructor for the Massachusetts Maritime Academy, which is where he's coming to us live from today. Rick, really appreciate you being here, and we want to thank the Maritime Academy for letting us use their systems here to have this conversation today. So I'll turn it over to you.
Absolutely. Thanks for inviting me. It's great to participate. So we're going to talk about designated person, and please ask any questions. I may not know the answer. It's an important subject. Where did this whole designated person thing come from? It's in the ISM code, but it stems from the Herald of Free Enterprise, which was a big roll-on, roll-off ferry. They had these big bow doors like you see on a lot of big ferries. Some of the captains had written to management in letters and said, we need an indicator light on these bow doors so that we know they're closed on the bridge, a light, red or green. That came out in the Board of Inquiry. This started leading towards the ISM code. The ferry shipped water. The doors were left open. They weren't checked by the chief officer, the guy that's supposed to close the doors. He fell asleep. Large vessels shipped water onto the main deck, and it went on board, and then free surface effect rolled over, and 193 people drowned. And it was a horrible situation. So that's really where the whole concept of designated person comes from. If someone on board a vessel sees a really important need or issue related to safety, that there's a mechanism to get to top management. So what you have here is the ISM code, which some of your companies, a few do, has one version of the designated person, almost identical to ISM, but not exactly the same. And then SubM has a version. So if you look at the ISM in RCP, it really says needs to be a link between the company and those on board. That's anyone on board having direct access to the highest level of management, which probably is your president. And it doesn't mean they have to be a direct report. That's a person you can call and get that information to the top of the company. That's the concept. The other concept, both in RCP and ISM, is that the safety and pollution aspects of the vessel's operation, how good it's working, is the shoreside organization providing what the mariners need to safely operate that boat or that ship. I think it makes sense because, look, management systems are about management accountability. That's what they're about. And to make the president the DPA makes sense in this small organization such that the people on the boat are willing to talk to that person. Now, my experience dealing with the river industry, which is family-owned companies, these smaller organizations, have a great rapport with their people, but you would want to be careful that they understand that it's okay to call the boss about an issue. I haven't seen any negatives about this in any industry papers or press. I think with a small organization, keep it open, keep it above ground, board, tell your TPO, put that in the TSMS.
What about, ships these boats are operating in a lot of cases 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. From a practical standpoint, are you really designating a single person, or can you split the responsibilities over more than one individual or have a backup? What do you think about that aspect?
So you can split it up as long as you've got them covered. What you usually see is for a larger organization, a company with 20 or 30 or more boats, might want to have two DPAs that handle, one handles the river group, one handles the other group. And that would work. When that DPA or one of them goes on vacation or is not available, a notice should be sent out for an alternate DPA. Again, the ISM code doesn't require training, but ASK will kind of push you that way. And if you're subject to oil company audits, they will really push you that way with doing some training. There's a misnomer in industry. Sometimes people think that the DPA has to be doing everything. That's impossible. We don't need the DPA involved every time, the starboard engine's got a leak. But the DPA should have tools. There's ways to do it. You don't wait for the internal audit. You want leading indicators in your company that the DPA is checking on these things and or these different functions. If the engineering department has an issue with communications or resources, you can talk to the DPA. You could actually write it in your TSMIS to say, and shoreside people. When I help a company, if they want a simple procedure on a DPA to ensure that DPA can monitor the effectiveness of the TSMIS, the DPA shall attend a minimum of 2 operations meetings a quarter, 1 risk assessment per year, whatever makes sense. But then if you write that down, you need to track that and make sure it's done.
Rick, this is Caleb. I've got one. In ISM, there is Part A, the discussion of designated person and what one should do. Are there other places in ISM that get into further details of what the DPA should or should not be doing? Or is it just in that one clause?
It's just in that one clause. I don't recall of any other clauses. However, the DPA should be able to explain how the company meets all those other clauses. The DPA really needs to be an expert on that TSMIS because he or she's responsible for the implementation. The regulation has painted the DPA into a little bit of a difficult situation, so we're trying to figure out how can the DPA do it.
Great, thank you. Do you want to dive into the case study?
Yeah. So a fatality occurred on a ship with an engineer working on an electrical circuit. The ship's officers did not follow the TSMIS or the SMS exactly. And they weren't using the permit to work system in an electrical test room, a test room that's designed just for this purpose. But the SMS did not exempt that room, lockout, tag out. There's special precautions when you're actually working on a live circuit. This is an ocean-going ship. A person died, this great kid. The Coast Guard sent a letter to the DPA, and it was 1 page, but essentially said, we're assuming control. We think the safety management system is not being implemented. Call your local Coast Guard for more information. Something like that. I can't remember exactly, but that's a pretty alarming letter. This was an oil major. This is not a small company. Issued a major nonconformity against the vessel, but the Coast Guard did not stop the vessel. They started talking about corrective action. The company management went down and was talking directly with the captain of the port. And then the company decided to challenge the major nonconformity. They put in corrective and preventative actions, the training and use of the permit system while working on any electrical circuit, any place on the vessel. Then the company challenged the Coast Guard through the administrative law process and said, we don't think it's a major nonconformity. It's a nonconformity, and it kept going up the administrative process in the Coast Guard to appeal. It was overturned in favor of the company. Yes, it's not a major nonconformity. And the Coast Guard never shut down. It would be a big deal for a small company if you wanted to fight it. Could have just said, okay, fine, let's pick up the pieces and fix this thing and do whatever. But it shows you the extent. So, there were meetings where no less than 8, 10, 12 people in a room, 5, 6 Coast Guard captains, Coast Guard lawyers, ABS lawyers, ABS surveyors, ABS people that did the last audit, ISM audit of that company, the third-party audit. Coast Guard wanted to know why they didn't find this, what the Coast Guard said was a gap in the SMS. I would say this. Number one, safety management is one of the most difficult things you do. If you think it's hard to run inland boats and barges and keep the oil in the tanks, and it is, it's even hard to run a safety management system effectively. It's extremely difficult, but that's our job. And the best thing you can do is to reduce the risk or the likelihood of anything happening bad. That's the big rocks, people falling over the side in the river. Go after the big risks first.
No, Rick, but one thing I would point that might be helpful to people who you're talking a lot about ISM. I know there's publications out there that are available. Of course, you have additional training. We'll show up some of that here just in a moment. There is an ISM code book out there that contains the code, and there are also implementation guides that taken in that same publication. So that's additional resource if someone would want to go out there and find that on the internet.
I actually published a book on the ISM code for mariners and managers, and it's on Amazon. The big deal, a risk assessment really needs to reduce risk. It's not a paper exercise, which I suspect goes on a lot, quite frankly. A risk assessment needs to be painful for a company. It needs to cause the company to take different actions to reduce risk. If you're not doing that, maybe you need to think about, are we really doing the right thing here? Our goal here, whether you're a TPO or a marine operator or whatever, our goal is the same. It's to reduce the risk of operational incidents. Not to zero. You can't get the risk to zero. The only way to get it to zero is to not do the work. Take this TSMA stuff very seriously and reach out, benchmark with other companies, talk to your competitor. How do you do this? Not how do you do it so that you can pass an audit. That's not the question to make it safer for the mariners and for the marine environment.
Good information, Rick. I'm going to go ahead and show this last slide here. I did mention that you've got some upcoming courses. There's a website there if you would like to reach out to get more information on Rick's courses or anything else that he might provide. Of course, the information for TVIB is shown there on the right. I'm not saying this is a stop point for the presentation. Just going to leave this up here for people to gather that information off the slide if they would like that, or reach out for their other contacts for either ActSafe or TVIB.
Again, I want to thank Rick for taking the time to talk with everybody today. If you've been on the webinar, you'll get a email after the fact with the recording, and we'll see if we can't get you some of the high-level bullet points of some of the suggestions Rick was making, because I agree. I think he had some excellent ideas, some tips to implement, and we want to make sure that you all get a good amount of value from this webinar. If you have suggestions, for those of you who have been participating on future topics you'd like us to talk about or in TVIB Talks, please let us know. We're always looking to hear what things you want to hear more information on, training opportunities, etc. So thank you, everyone.